What's up?
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Yeah, this is Strange Realms. This is what podcast
S
4?
up in the number 4. Working on number 4 tonight.
Yeah,
It's New Year's. Don't
got-
know when exactly this will go up, but if you hear stuff in the background, it's more of a
fireworks. Yeah, we thought they were gunshots for a second.
Yeah, but hope you guys are safe. Have a happy New Year's, holidays, and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
Thanks
be
for
responsible.
Thanks for tuning in.
Don't drink and drive and kill somebody.
Or yourself. Today we're going to talk about mythology.
Yeah, I don't know. It's there's a lot of stuff that you can tie into mythology, and it's kind of like, I don't know. My favorite part about it, really, is just the fact that, and a lot of them, man, like there's this like reoccurring themes,
Definitely.
I don't know what, just different perspectives or different, like it's just different ways of telling the same like phenomenon. In a lot of ways, like there's a lot of philosophy, and it's a really good mirror image almost of humanity, and like how you grow as people, and
Right.
how what like I don't know, just different ways to explain things.
There's also a recurring theme too when it goes to mythology, because I look at mythology as not only a religion for people in the past and even today, because some people still follow Norse mythology.
Yeah,
But I look at it like politics get wrapped up in it too, just like it does today, even though it's not supposed to.
it's intertwined in a lot of
mix.
it because
It especially in older stuff, a lot of the of their beliefs really dictated how they ran themselves as a society.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
I think another recurring thing with it though is like the class stuff, like lower, middle, and upper class. Like you had your farmers and your peasants, serfs, whatever you want to call them.
peasant god.
I mean, there's a lot of them though.
Yeah,
I mean that I guess identified more with like their mindset and like where they were in life and what their role was and all that stuff, which is no different than today. Like people say they don't have. I don't know. It's just a different way of saying like current events, but it was like, I don't know. We view it as mystical, but that's really like they were just retelling what was going on around them, what they perceived going on around them.
I've been reading this book recently. I just started. I'm only a few pages in. It's about Greek mythology, and I like the way he explained it. Was really cool. It's like the Greeks were the first people. The Greeks and the Romans were the first people that really humanized their gods.
Yeah.
And Zeus was just like a buff dude who liked to whoremonger.
Yeah, pretty
basically.
much.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
he was not a loyal dude.
Hermes was just a normal looking guy.
In the common sense of like matrimony, like our view of it and stuff like that.
Yeah. The Greek Roman is all, a lot similar. As far as their pantheon and stuff goes, but Greek was probably the first one that I really got into because Hercules came out when I was a kid, so super into that movie. I love that movie, and then
which it's funny because that movie is not like they portrayed Zeus as like a loving family man, and he was anything but that.
Well, of course, it's Disney; they gotta fluff it all up, but. Whatever, it was awesome at the time.
Yeah.
But then when I got into high school, it was like my freshman year of high school, and we read some excerpts from like the Iliad.
Yeah.
And
Odyssey. I had the Odyssey a lot.
And all that, and then that got me really into all that stuff. And I was like, man, this stuff is awesome.
Well, I don't know. It's way more interesting. Like,
no, definitely.
As far as how it relates to you as a person, and just like how you, I don't know. There's all this they do petty stuff to each other all the time, and maybe like I don't mean just petty like insignificant, like they did terrible stuff to each other.
Yeah, right.
That there was a lot of betrayal and like pitting like agendas going against each other within the Pantheon, and like
definitely, yeah.
like the gods in that one basically cast out the Titans as the people who like ruled, the entities, whatever you want to call them, that ruled the world. Basically, it was more primordial and like ancient and just more chaotic. I guess they brought a little bit more order,
right,
and stuff like that. But even within that, because so they were seen as like, protectors and like, kind of like in a really broad sense of people and like order and civilization and stuff like that. But they were still just like, it was just a more refined, like somewhat organized version of chaos. But I don't know. It's really interesting, just the parallels to people and like just how you live your life and stuff like that.
Yeah. Just like I said, Norse mythology. It's really interesting because I'm really into like the whole in touch with nature thing.
Yeah, I mean they were definitely, it was more harmonious, I guess.
Yeah, which I mean the Greeks and stuff, they did there's a lot of nature involved with them too as well, but I don't know. I feel the Norse mythology, the Norse stuff resonates a little more with me, like personally.
Yeah,
I guess.
For sure. I don't know. I mean, Greek was definitely had like order to it, but it was pretty chaotic, man. Like, anything like, I don't know. They were just so unpredictable for the most part, because they would do good stuff for one person for really like no reason. They just liked this person, and then they were like, but I'm going to do something to somebody equally as like respectable. And,
right.
Just ruin their life and turn them into something. You know what I'm saying?
They call it the Greek tragedy for a reason.
Yeah, dude. It's pretty, it's like tumultuous. It's never right. Like,
it's just,
I don't know. It's
infamous.
Something's always popping off with them. Norse was definitely more like about, as far as like the Asgard or Asgardian, part of the Pantheon
right.
of like just different deities and stuff like that. Because Ymir was, I guess, a deity. Like there probably was worship of him in some sense, but he definitely represented more chaos and like just upturning the table, so to speak. Like
right.
Loki was too, though, and he was a part of that, like the Asgards. But he was just like
Loki was.
He was always getting this mischief, but it wasn't like
he was anti-hero.
Yeah,
he was all about Loki, pretty much.
Yeah, he was definitely self-centered for sure. A lot of them were, though. That's what I mean. All these gods.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's
Zeus definitely was
the problem with power.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I always liked Thor.
Yeah, he was kind of like I was reading earlier. He's like the champion of like the people, the common people, more like the warrior caste and the like lower caste or whatever.
Right.
I mean I don't know, their structure was a little bit different than your typical society and stuff like that. It wasn't as layered. There was definitely like nobility and like warrior and all that stuff, but
yeah, right.
I guess just my perception, it might have been a little bit less between the middle and lower. Like it was kind of more, they were closer to each other than what we've got today for sure.
Oh yeah.
I mean, at least in America. It wasn't Odin like more like he was about like knowledge and magical stuff, like magical forces or magical energy and stuff like that, and like secrets and I don't know, just knowledge in general, information.
Let's see. Oh yeah, one of my all-time favorites is Egyptian.
Yeah.
Egyptian is
it's alien almost. It's different. It's way different than.
It's very weird and cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of that old like BC stuff was different, man. Like Meso or not. God, that's not. Well, I guess Mesoamerican was around for a while. Probably the Olmecs, which is what like the Mayans and the Aztecs are based off of. I mean, it's just a continuation of that thing. But Sumerian is what I'm Mesopotamian stuff.
Right.
Like Gilgamesh, like the king or the ruler. But
Gilgamesh, book about Gilgamesh, I want to start reading it.
Yeah,
too.
He was really like prideful and egotistical. He was very confident of himself, and there was a lot of times where that like bit him in the ass. But I don't know. That's kind of like my take on him. But it still was like I don't know, like they. It definitely wasn't as like strange as Egyptian. I don't think. At least they had like Tiamat, that god, that dragon. Like she was like created everything.
No,
I
yeah.
think, and then but she was chaotic as shit. She was super. There was not about order. She was like primordial chaos, basically. Uh, Egyptian was just, I don't know. It had all these, like those phases, the old, middle, and new. Um, it really was. I don't know. Thoth was really interesting. It had I don't know. He was like he just imparted a lot of knowledge. I feel like, I don't know. He was kind of like the Hierophant of that whole pantheon.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot of parallels with like Set and Satan. He was like the usurper and stuff like that, or not, because I don't guess Satan ever took over like the kingdom of God and all that stuff, but he definitely was like against it and like trying to, in the process of working towards that type of thing. And Set was definitely he was supposed to upend Horus and all this stuff. Anubis was really cool too, because he was like, I guess a common perception of him is like evil, but he wasn't. He was just like, he was like Hades basically. Except, I mean, he was more about judgment. He definitely judged you. He wasn't evil per se. He was just like, people always associate like death gods with evil. Like Alpuach, for example, and like Mayan and Aztec was like delighted in like luring people and killing them and feeding off of them and stuff like that. And
right.
Anubis wasn't like that. He was just more.
There's I'm on
he would judge you.
Britannica. Osiris says, according to a myth, Osiris was a king of Egypt who was murdered and dismembered by his brother Seth. His wife Isis reassembled his body and resurrected him, allowing them to conceive a son, the god Horus.
Yeah.
He was represented as a mummified king wearing wrappings that left only the green skin of his hands and face exposed. Reminds me of Smite.
Yeah. I mean, that's like literally their depiction of it.
But that's a crazy
People don't know
story.
Smite's like it's a game, and then they like all the characters that you play are just gods, and you just like it's a really simplified game, but it's pretty accurate depiction. Yeah.
They have so like Egyptian mythology has so many different gods and goddesses.
Yeah, it's got a ton of them. Well, that, and it's got the three kingdoms, and like there was a lot of them that were like, I guess they all, certain ones were more important in certain kingdoms,
right?
From what I understand. Yeah, the old kingdom, the pharaoh as well as the people offered allegiance to Ra, like the sun and the creator god. And that the pharaoh performed rituals, so the Nile would, to him basically, sacrifices and stuff like that.
Ra, that brings up other,
yeah, like Rothschild,
topics.
Red Shield, Rothschild, and all that stuff. It's really interesting, man.
Yeah.
If you trace back like language and stuff, it really, or just like root words and what they meant back in the day, and how they tie into that.
I'm looking at all this stuff and all this mythology, and then I told you I've been reading that book
about the Tartarian Empire,
and stuff, dude, and it's all crazy. It's like I can't wait to start getting deeper into the book, and talking about it more. But
well, it's basically like this civilization that existed. There's not like a lot of written record of it, and it's almost gotten scrubbed in a lot of ways from history, and you don't really there's mentions of it. It's really hard to trace it back, but like I don't know, people like there's a lot of people who argue that it even existed, but I don't know. I don't buy into that whole side of it. It's really and it started in like Russia, like that was one of the.
It gets really interesting, especially talking.
Maybe that started there, but
talking about the mythology, because talking about Rome, and the Roman Empire, and
it's called Saturnia, which it wasn't like, I don't know, like there's a lot of stuff on it, and you can look it up. Wasn't even called Rome. I mean, the city was called Rome, but it was the Empire of Saturnia, and that's where they got Saturnalia, We talked about that.
Yeah. And then this guy's talking about the Roman Empire is, it still exists. But it's part of the bigger, deep state type stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Well, I mean, it's basically the idea that, and not even maybe the idea of the physical, like, transference of, like, the title of, like, what, the biggest, the big dog empire at that time, like the one that really, like, called the shots. And, it was kind of like the Tartarians, and then it became, like, that transferred pretty much to the Romans. And then, like, how the U.S. is basically like the new Roman Empire.
Right.
Yeah.
He
goes into how
he's talking about how, like, the Tartarians have only been wiped out for, like, 150 years. The last of the knowledge of them, like, was only like 1940. It was like
that's when they started, like, not really, like, talking about it.
Yeah.
And just writing it out.
That's when it was, like, really, like, hushed and boom. I don't know who discovered it or who, like.
There's not a lot on it, man. It's hard to look into.
Yeah, dude. That's why when I found that book, I was like, oh, I have to get it. I have to read it. Even if it's complete bullshit, and he tells you at the very beginning, it's like we talk about all the time.
Don't trust anybody, dude. I mean, or trust nothing. Figure it out yourself.
But it's also, he says something really
That sounds terrible, but at the same time, it's how you have to do it, man.
He says something really good at the beginning. He's like, don't believe what I've written in this book without doing your own research, but also don't believe anything that you think you know at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, damn, that's true, man. Like,
it's paradoxical, but at the same time, it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, got off track a little bit, but I could talk about that shit for days.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, because it's interesting. It's it's the same concept, dude, as how, like, in Native, like, we came over here, we conquered, from what we understand, and, like, I guess in history, we came over, wiped out, took over the Native Americans' land, the whole continent of North America, basically.
He says something about that too, that's fabricated to an extent.
To an extent?
Yeah.
To what extent?
So the first people apparently in the American lands, and then this guy, you got to remember, this guy's like a flat earther also, so I'm kind of like, but like we've talked about it, I'm not ashamed to admit it, that I've seen and heard things that I'm like, flat earth may be fucking true, I don't know.
I feel like if anything, man, it's kind of like, I think both realities could exist.
Right.
I mean, from what I've seen and everything, but, like, I don't know, I like to be open-minded.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced of it, but there's definitely some stuff that's just like, I don't know. I feel like if anything, man, it's like the whole concept of how your perception determines your reality. So all that, like, your reality is different from mine, but they're both very real and they both exist in a way. And it's like if anything, that's just a way to validate like parallel realities, not that dimensions really, but like there could be a version in a parallel universe of Earth that's flat or something, like oval. Right. I mean, who knows?
So my most basic explanation for, like, perception and how people perceive shit, it's like we look at something, and as long as you're not colorblind, I guess, obviously, like, as long as you can look and see normal, like the majority of people, like, we look and see something that's orange or red, and we know that it's orange or red, but it may be more orange to me. You know what I mean? Like, the hues and the contrasts of the color itself are going to be different to every single individual person. Yeah. So it's like all perception, and if you take it on that deep level like that, like, is the Earth flat? And if you believe in, the parallel universes or other realities.
Well, that ties into Norse mythology because they called them planes.
Yeah, you take the Bifrost and the cosmic egg and blah.
Well, I mean, that basically it's like
super crazy stuff.
And it's like they had planes and realms. It was just realms. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really necessarily
realms. Yeah, like and subscribe.
It was kind of like well, they had the world tree, you know, and different parts of that tree basically had these different layers and, you know, levels, if you will, and they just referred to them as realms. But if you think of it literally, it's like different layers or, you know, or levels or whatever, and it's not necessarily portrayed as a globe at all, you know. I mean, and some people perceive that as like, oh, well, they just didn't, you know, have satellites and imagery and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, yeah, but it's at the same time, like, I don't know. None of us have been outside. The common person has never launched into space and looked down at the planet. So you really don't know. You just assume it to be that way.
Right.
And like I said, there's a lot of imagery that there's just different stuff for me that makes it seem like that's the portrayal of the universe and how it's arranged, you know, is one way.
It's like I think it's in that
I think
book.
they both exist at the same time, and
right.
It's just different taps into it.
There's a quote, I think it's in that book that says, I'm going to butcher it because it's not in front of me, but basically if you make one generation believe something to be true, then the next generation will assume it to be true.
Yeah.
And then the further it gets, basically
paradigms. Yeah.
Deep paradigms. Paradigms is an interesting topic too. Anyway,
I mean, I don't know, but it ties it into Norse for sure. They are back to it. Like they definitely thought that way.
Around to it. The Japanese mythology. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it, like I guess I'm assuming like Chinese religion as well.
It's similar.
A lot of old religions in general. A lot of their lore and stuff and stories is passed down through just vocal, oral tellings of it, and it's just remembrance of people repeating it.
And see what's interesting, and this isn't really a Tartaria episode, but okay, we were talking about earlier.
Once you know about it, you just can't.
It really eats away at you, man.
Man,
it really does. It's like me with like Saturn symbology and just like it's all over the place. It's way more prevalent than what people would definitely think existed. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. And that really that bites away at me. That and UFOs, but that's always like bit away at me. Like just what is that? Like I don't know, dude.
If you look and you get real deep into mythology, there's a lot of UFO stuff in Egyptians, and I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen Ancient Aliens.
I hate that. I don't hate it, man, but it's just like it's the super glossed over and like I don't know. I don't know if gentrified is the word. Gentrified isn't the word.
It's like it brings attention to it, which is good, but it's like, is it the right attention?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. It's like
it's the popularized, like I don't know, more known. Yeah. It's definitely known about.
And it's not the
if people are into UFOs at a base level, they're like, oh, ancient aliens. They're like, I want to see you get into this.
It's not to discredit it or anything, but it's like
because there's a lot of good like people that are I would say credible, just because it's what you're talking about is weird and out there. If you didn't, it's not that they didn't do research or not just make. I don't know. I feel like there's definitely a good amount of people. Definitely in the UFO community that just make up stuff so they can make money, they can sell books. Yeah. There's a ton of them, but
it's just like everything else though. People doing false flag bullshit and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But so the Japanese Pantheon, apparently, let's see, it was passed down through different tellings of it, but they've compiled it into two. And one is called, I'm going to butcher it, Kojiki, compiled in 712. I'm not really sure about the years on that because it's like, I don't know if Japanese uses the AD or what it is.
We'll do what?
It compiled in the year 712.
Oh, AD. Okay, yeah,
like
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Records of ancient matters, and the Nihon Shoki, compiled in 720, Chronicles of Japan, and it tells the origins of the ruling class and basically how to strengthen that authority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
712. For some reason I thought you said 1712. That's really late.
No. Yeah, really early on. And then they go on. They talk about Izanami.
Wasn't she the wife of like what's his name? She was like one of the main ones initially.
Izanagi.
Izanagi, yeah, like they were weren't they
husband and wife?
But they were the chief at the first, if you will. Yeah.
And then they, I don't know, something went down.
Yeah, Izanami got like killed. She went to the underworld. He tried to find her, and he couldn't find her forever. And I think he finally did, but she had been like corrupted by the underworld and become like she like reanimated. Basically, she was like dead but alive, undead basically. And it's. I don't know, it like really affected him and made him depressed, and it like did all this stuff, and it became the whole polar, the dual, thing, opposite of each other. Which is, I don't know, that's a
duality.
Yeah, there's a lot of, but that's another thing about mythology is it's just like these different versions of duality, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, there's never really.
That's why I was bringing up that Tartaria stuff, because it's like, if you really look into like. There's a common theme all the time, like, old civilizations, lost knowledge and stuff like that. And it's like, you don't know what you don't know, first off. And then secondly, like, it's just different retellings of the same kind of like paradigmal, what's it called? An archetype type of thing. Or a story arc. It's really, really similar. It's like just different retellings and perspectives on like the flow, of civilization, like, where we were, like, what we had achieved or knew back then. You don't know because you weren't around.
Right.
The history's written by people who are in a position that they won or they were in power, so they can really say or write whatever they want. And if you really look into that whole thing, like
history is written by the victors.
Yeah, and I don't know, like our education system was started by the Rockefellers, the Rockefeller Foundation, who were in a arguably were the rulers of the world.
And they also owned the companies that published
most of
education books.
Yeah, I mean, making a book back then was more common knowledge, like not just them knew how to publish, but anybody could publish a book just like you can now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But now it's more about like, okay, that's the wrong information. This is the right information. Back then it just existed. I mean, they still told you like you shouldn't believe this. This is what you need to believe. But
they inserted the curriculum.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean,
I don't know, and that's a whole rabbit hole of like indoctrination and just like whitewashing of history, like with Native Americans. Yeah, that's what I was getting at though. Like we came over and literally wiped out a ton of that civilization, and all that knowledge is lost, But you weren't around when it happened. And now they're starting to say, like, if that's actually what happened, and we came over and wiped them out, that's what I assume, I guess, which assumptions are bad. But let's say you did, like, that's what happened. What the telling of it. We came in, took over the land, killed a bunch of them, and took over. Where was I going with that? You come in, you take over, and... now, in a lot of books, instead of portraying it as a brutal takeover, like us killing them, there's some textbooks, I swear to God, you can find them where it talks about how Native Americans gave us the land, and like they cooperated with. It was like, a mutual thing,
right? Like
we didn't
traded
just
with them.
Well, they did that. Like they didn't realize like what we were like. We were like, oh well, we'll trade you this land for this. And they're like, we perceived it as them giving us the land for like, stuff that we perceived to be like super like cheap, like hides and furs or, stuff like we traded livestock and this for it. And we thought like, hey, they're giving us all this land, But now, like instead of just, which there's a lot of evidence that they, did get wiped out for the most part. And now it's funny because like when I was a kid and I was learning about Native Americans, in history, it was a lot more included in American history.
Right.
I understood that it happened, but now like they don't teach it. It's been slowly phased out as something that happened, and that's just an example of how you can phase out information that actually happened. And so by like 3 or 4 generations, you don't even know that happened to begin with.
Yeah, right.
That's what I mean.
When I was in
that was my point. Yeah.
Elementary school, the every year the only time we would really study anything about Native Americans would be like during Thanksgiving. So I'm like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was like this feast where they came together and they all cooperated and stuff like that. And that might have happened on a certain scale, but I don't know.
Once, right? Like,
yeah, there's all these oral traditions within Native American culture. That's why it's like, it's really like, you know, in modern Native American culture.
Right, yeah.
Like we got wiped out, and like there's a lot of resentment, rightfully so. And you know, like I don't know, they just don't talk. It never gets talked about. You know what I'm saying? It's like slowly phased out, like something that didn't happen. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like I literally looked up textbooks, and it was just whitewashed over.
Yeah.
It's really just
It's
it makes you
terrible.
think about what else of history has been altered. You know,
all the shit going on up in Canada with all of the Native American, or not Native Americans, but it's like native to Canada.
Yeah, well, native North Americans.
Yeah, right. And where they would take them to these schools, and there's just like
that was in America too. They would try to
colonize.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, but that's history. Like that's literally like an attempt to alter, whether it's direct, you know, intentionally or not. Like, I don't know. Super interesting. So I guess this podcast is about mythology and just like
mythology,
history. Like, because mythology is, I don't know, we perceive it as stuff that's just fictional. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure a certain amount of it is, and it's just like, you know, or embellishment, or, you know, and there's a certain extent of, you know, phenomenon they can't explain, maybe.
Right.
They didn't know what it was.
A lot of mythology, even if you can't see it or
that's something that actually happened.
Think that it still doesn't exist or whatever. There are a lot of people out there that they still practice some of this dark magic type stuff that go along with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can believe or you don't have.
Well, I mean, dark
believe.
arts is always a common theme in every mythology, whether it's gods or people who worship those gods.
Some form of like sacrifice and rituals, and
yeah,
and they're all full of symbolism, and they really are all into like the planets and stuff, and it's all just so crazy.
It really, a lot of it ties together, though. I mean, it's just
it
very cohesive.
If you can connect the dots, and it'll make your mind just explode.
For sure.
Especially this Tartarian stuff, man. It's like
we keep talking about it,
I keep talking about it, bro. But I'm telling you, it's
the thing that you're looking into right now. Yeah,
it's so it's pulling me in.
It really makes you think.
Yeah. We was talking about the
Aztec. I mean, the Native American. That's just on a different part of the, you know.
Yeah, right.
Different continent.
No, they were really big. Everyone, you know, they always talk about the Aztec and the Mayans.
Like Montezuma's curse and all this other
and
stuff.
all of their sacrifices and stuff that they
Yet
did.
again, more ritual and like, very deliberate, like attempts to appease some kind of entity.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that gets you into.
It would be so fascinating to like just go back and like observe like how that was. I would love, dude. It'd be something, man.
Man, it'd be wild.
Just sit there and like hover above like, you know, a town and just see how it operated back in, you know, some Mayan or, you know, Aztec city and like Tenochtitlan, you know, back before the Spanish came over and another, you know, hostile takeover basically. Yeah, it would be super interesting. Because, like, if you look at the Aztecs and the Mayans, they had Quetzalcoatl, but that was the same as Kukulkan in Mayan, basically. It was like the serpent, like I think he was like one of he was maybe the chief deity. He was super important to him, I know. Maybe in relation to, like, the Aztec people, maybe not the Pantheon of the gods, but here, let me find out, like, what their actual chief deities were. Okay, so the beginning... It was Ometeotl, and he was like it's almost like Big Bang level, dude. So it says like before time itself began, for lightness and darkness, the spirit already existed. Whether it always existed outside of time or space, had somehow invented itself. You know, they don't, you know, people, the culture at the time didn't know, but the spirit never had a mother or father. It just was the energy of the universe, as they described it. Everything came from this. It means the God of duality, and it ruled over all opposing and contradictory forces in the chaotic cosmos. So it was like, that's their chief deity, I guess, is Omete Otl. Yeah. And it literally goes into duality, like how the light side and the dark side, it's depicted as kind of like, here, I'm going to say this image, it's kind of like a different version of yin and yang. Like, it's really interesting.
Right.
Like, there's other ones, Alpuash. He was, of the Mayans, he was kind of like, he was definitely a death god, but he was different from Anubis. Like, Anubis judged you, like we were saying earlier, and like weighed your intent and your purity of heart, as that put it.
Right.
Against a feather, like it had to be lighter than the feather, basically. The more corrupt and corrupted you had become spiritually, the heavier your heart was. And, if it was too much, it would outweigh the feather, and you weren't getting in. Not to the desired, like, part of the underworld, basically. But Alpuash was kind of like, I'm almost positive he was like into like death and like consuming living flesh, like really not, benevolent characteristics at all. Hold on, let me see. Camazotz, which is really simple. Like, I don't know, there was some guy who said that Batman was kind of like based off Camazotz or something. Yeah. Or that's where like the bat was super important. Like, it meant fear, but it was like, that just that whole thing that Batman's about, like stealth and subterfuge and ninjutsu and like outthinking your enemy and all this different stuff. Like,
yeah, right.
It was really interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah, so he was the god of death, darkness, and disaster. So he was really like chaotic. Like he was not about order, and Anubis definitely had some sense of order to him. He had a role that he filled, and he was still considered the god of the dead, but he wasn't, out to just like make the world fall into complete chaos.
Yeah.
That was more, what was it, Apophis? I think in Egyptian mythology, that big serpent. It's almost like Jormungandr. Apophis, like Apophis. Let me look that up. I'm gonna look this up. But yeah, like he was the I don't know, he was supposed to like, or Alpuash is supposed to like stink super bad. He was basically their version of the Christian version of the devil.
Oh, right, okay.
And he kept the souls of evil people in the underworld under like he tortured them and like all that stuff.
This is called a pep.
Apophis or Apophis, yeah.
Apophis, an ancient Egyptian demon of chaos.
Yeah, see, that's why he was the god of chaos. Yeah.
So
he was anti what they were about.
The form of a serpent. The serpent is a huge symbol in a lot of
everywhere.
Of stuff.
No, it's in literally every culture. Yeah.
All
the Naga and Hindu and like there's even some in like Tibetan and Buddhist, old Buddhist mythology. The Nagas, they had that in Europe. Was like the dragon, basically, but it was like evil. It was demonic. Like it wanted to there's different depictions. Like it hoarded gold, it hoarded valuables. It was like greedy, and which that's a big theme in Norse mythology. Fafnir, he like hoarded gold and like greed. He was the god of greed. He became a demon, like a dragon, basically, and hoarded all this wealth. But he was miserable. But he was greedy. It's what he cared about. And then like Mesoamerican, you had the like we were talking about Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan. Like he was not necessarily bad, and that's the same in Chinese. Like Chinese gods were heavenly, and they were like heavenly, and I don't think they were like, you talking about the Mesoamerican ones, like anti-hero-ish. They were more like Sumerian, I feel like they were just like not good or bad. They just created a lot of stuff, and they were both basically.
Right.
They were neutral, if anything. And Chinese ones were like heavenly, and they represented wisdom and like benevolence and all this stuff. Japanese too. So I don't know. It's literally in every culture. They had them in Native American too. There's probably different versions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where were you going with the whole serpent thing? Or just that?
Yeah, just how prevalent it is.
It's everywhere.
And,
yeah.
I mean, all throughout history, even up to today, and like, it's, I guess the ties it has to just dark shit.
Yeah.
In general, like.
Yeah.
It's always representative.
They were like,
bad.
I think the Naga, they were like knowledgeable and like they were wise. There were certain ones that were good, but like there are also ones that were super deceptive and like corrupting, if you will. I mean, in Christian, the serpent was the devil in the tree who convinced Adam and Eve to eat the apple.
Right.
Yeah, like, temptation and all that stuff. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, Aztec. What was another one? Chalk. He was like the rain god. He had a tragic story. Like he was like had this love affair, and then like it was really weird. But he was like the god of rain and like renewal and stuff like that. So he was like depressed, but at the same time like knew he had responsibilities, or it was something to the effect of that. Like he brought the rain, but it was like it's cloudy and it's dark and gloomy looking, but it's necessary because it brings life to the plant life and allows life to exist basically.
Right. I think it's
another example of duality.
It's interesting too, the pyramids, Aztec pyramids, and the Egyptian pyramids.
Yeah.
That they just the fact.
Oh yeah,
I
mean just pyramids in general.
In general, yeah. Like,
there's like 600 documented pyramids across the world,
Greeks,
dude. Like
Greeks
I don't know.
didn't really have any pyramids, I don't think, but they did do great architecture work as far as. Colosseums.
Yeah. Well, that was like Roman
like
and
that.
Greek. They just copied. Romans copied pretty much everything, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Well, there's a pyramid in China that they found like a couple dozen, if not more, in China.
That's crazy.
Yeah, dude.
All over the world.
And for when I say pyramids, I don't mean like what you picture. Like when you think of pyramids, the first thing you think of is Egyptian pyramids, or maybe like Mesoamerican ones, Right. But these are like, they're clean. There's no like earth and stuff like growing around them. There's no trees and stuff like that on them. The ones they found in China were like super old and they were overgrown. But if you did like sonar scans, there was literally a pyramid. Like it was way denser. It was like a pyramid basically.
Right. That's crazy.
It's really interesting, man. What other ones have we not talked about? We pretty much talked about all of them.
Talked about a few. There's a ton more though. Chinese. This whole thing. Hindu.
Yeah, Hindu's fascinating though because
it's awesome.
A lot of Eastern religions were more about. It got not that all the religions and mythologies, pantheons, whatever your belief system. Back in the day, I mean, that still exists today in a lot of ways, but there's a lot more philosophy and like things about discipline and like the nature of reality, and it was really focused on looking inwards,
self,
and stuff like that. Especially Hinduism it's got a lot of similarities to Buddhism because, I mean, Buddha came from, like, he was a prince who was like a royal member, or member of this royal family in India, and he learned the middle way. Like he grew up as a royal and had everything, and then went all the other way and was super poor, on the very other end of it without anything, and then went like it's somewhere in the middle, and that's how they call it the middle path. Like balance basically in your life. Like take care of yourself. It's okay to have meager possessions. And stuff like that, but too much of it is a really, really bad thing, and too little of, whatever the opposite of that.
Obviously, right.
Is not just, what you want either.
It's interesting. Buddha, I always find that they say, I've heard, read stuff where he's like,
he's really similar to Jesus.
Yeah. They.
He is. There's so many parallels.
Which there's a lot of, I don't know what you want to call them, I guess, people throughout history and
deities, prince-like figures, basically.
They're all kind of, whether it's one entity making himself, physically
different, like,
right, throughout history, and he's just, because it's all the same lesson at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's really similar.
When you break it down.
Yeah. So. It's just like a different interpretation and retelling of like this message that this entity or whatever embodied and represented.
Right.
But, it's really, there's different nuances to all of them, but it's pretty much the same. It's like compassion and caring for people. Don't judge people. You're no better or, lesser than anybody else. And then they really talked about, like, he was just like, don't worry about what other people do and focus on yourself and worry about yourself and you'll be all right. Jesus, like, pretty much embodied that, at least in my opinion. And then Buddha was basically the same way. There's a lot of Hindu gods that were like that. They considered Buddha a prophet. It's kind of like how Jesus was a prophet to in Islamic religion. He was still recognized as a smart individual, or enlightened individual. Yeah. Which is, dude, and it's crazy because it's like, we talked about it a couple of times. It's like literally different versions and interpretations of like the same phenomenon, the same,
I'm gonna say it. It's the same. It's just different.
It's just different, yeah. It is though. It's literally like, I don't know, just talking in circles almost. It's just the rehash of the same archetype and story. Yeah. Which ties into that stuff we were talking about earlier, like with the ancient civilization thing. Like, it's just this that's what, I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot. Like, it's in, like we were saying earlier, in all these fictional stories, there's always this like older, more advanced, more knowledgeable society about reality, everything, and it's gone now. There's the ruins of it. You can kind of tell it was there for some reason, or a little bit. Like, it's just like this thing that's like what remains of it, basically, and it's in like all these different fictional stories that people come up with, and it's I don't know, it's really interesting. Like, why does that keep popping up in fictional? And even in mythologies.
Yeah, lost cities.
Like, you can kind of interpret, like in China, all those divine entities. Like, there was a kingdom. They lived in in a realm, basically, or it was like, an enlightened civilization, and we got away from that. We were like the lesser,
Right. Yeah. This is like Greek mythology. They lived on Olympus.
Yeah.
That's where the gods live. And it's like, was that a place?
Or like did
exist.
A philosophy among the populace, like a state of being, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Like, did we know more back in the day? Like, devolve almost a little bit.
And then I just keep talking about it, but I'm telling you.
No, it's
the
super
Tartarians. It's driving me crazy.
It's really, really. If you haven't looked into it and you're into this type of stuff, look into Tartaria. And really just stick with it. It's, I don't know, I've looked at it a little bit, not as much as you've been reading that book, and there's a lot more to that book than just Tartaria, but.
And it drives me crazy because I'm like, I know that it's all possibly complete bullshit, but it's just like some of the stuff that he talks about and the connections and with all the other stuff that I already know and think and shit, dude.
It connects with a lot of stuff. Man. It's a lot of like social conditioning and brainwash and rewriting of history, like as a for one.
A lot of shit wide open, man.
Yeah, it's a really good and fresh perspective on history and what you perceive as history.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if it isn't true, the fact that like, you know, history and the books and the way it's written and the way it's passed down, the way like it's literally controlled. So without us knowing, in 100 years they could rewrite everything that's happened in our lifetime.
That's what I was saying with the Native American thing. Like they're literally slowly phasing that out of education. Yeah. It's to the point now where it's not even really there.
Yeah, I've asked Aiden. Yeah, he's in fifth grade. And he was like, we never really even talked about it.
Yeah, and see, and my dad is like super into that. Like when he went to college, he is obsessed and infatuated, which I think is awesome, about Native American culture. He's got all these arrowheads and like, relics of the, like, where did that come from? You know what I'm saying? Like, it was there, but you don't talk about it. Like there remains and I mean, it's not that it doesn't get talked about, because I think at a higher education, like as far as my age group and lower, and I'm sure there's, kids that went, the younger than me, people who are in their like, 18, 19, 20s that are going to school to learn about Native American history.
Right.
But it just at a primal level, when you're really developing mentally, it's not taught.
No, yeah.
And it's like, why? When I was that young, I definitely got taught about Native Americans. And I think partially because my dad was so into it, or is into it, but I just knew about it. There was no way I was not going to know about the Native Americans.
No, right. Yeah, my dad was really into it, too. And
they have a whole, like, spirituality and philosophy to them, too, man. Yeah.
One of my cousins, she was married to a guy, and he was, like, legitimately, I don't know, I think his mom was full-blooded Indian.
Full?
Yeah. And he was. You could tell he was, too, because he was, very, very dark all the time, and his hair was real dark and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool-ass dude.
Which makes me think, dude, and, like, I was thinking about this earlier with the whole, like, politics and stuff like that. Like, Elizabeth Warren talked about how she was, like, this and this Native American just to get sympathy. Yeah. And really just kind of get people to vote for and get behind her. Like, I don't know about she lied about that.
Carrie, she's she's got some Native American blood in her.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people like have a tiny amount, a little bit. Cherokee and like, just wherever you live, basically, wherever your family, like, a couple generations back grew up.
Especially in Kentucky, because Kentucky was, it had a lot of Native American culture.
Like where my parents' house is basically like, that's all, like there's so many, like he finds arrowheads literally all the time. Because you got, farmland and stuff, and like you'll till the ground and you'll just find them everywhere. Arrowheads, like you can tell that it's chiseled. You know what I'm saying? It was some kind of implement.
Someone actually sat down and worked on.
Dude, he's got one. Look, so it's like an arrowhead or a spear tip, all right, and it had broke off. At some point, the tip had broke, and they like whittled it down to where it was like a scraper, but it still had the, bottom part of it that notched when it was an arrowhead that you tied the string, like where the slit in the wood was, the shaft of the arrow or spear. They put it in there and like, tie it up and fasten it. That was still there, but the top of it had been flattened off, but still sharpened, kind of like a chisel. So it would scrape the inside of hides and stuff. It's awesome. A really good example of like them just, it was tools and like, I don't know, like old head, like you're touching something that somebody else touched like, 1,000 years ago.
That's what I love going out and doing like rock hunting and shit, because it's like I'm quite possibly the first and only person that'll ever touch this particular.
It's been sitting there forever, or under dirt and sediment and stuff like that.
I like living where we live, man, because we're close enough to the city. At least me, you live in the city. Fuck all that.
Yeah, it's starting to get old.
I live close enough to go there within an hour of either one of them if I need to, but we're tucked away. The woods is pretty close, so
yeah, there's a lot of wildness to where this is. Yeah, for sure.
Trying to get deeper.
Yeah, we got off topic a little bit, but I don't know, man, because mythology just always makes me think about that. Like, if anything, this podcast is about definitely mythology and like different interpretations and retellings of stories and stuff like that. But
I think it's really cool.
History, man, and the concept of what history is.
People actually believed in this and followed it at one point. Like the way you
just exactly the same way people.
Maybe if you're Christian or your parents are Christian or whatever. If you I grew up going to church. I was grew up Baptist, and it's like it's cool to think that there were kids back in the day going to these gatherings or whatever, and they were like going for Odin, or they're going to praise whoever.
Like what? I mean, they had temples for sure.
Oh yeah,
but it wasn't like churches are just smaller, tiny examples of temples. Like it was more oral, and like you were just out hunting with your dad or your family, and they were talking about Odin, and like it was really like a handmead, like passed down over generations type stuff, lore and just like about history, like their history, It's just really interesting, man. I don't know. But yet again, that ties into like, it's like the, what's it called? A game, like phone, like, where somebody tells a story, like gossip. Somebody says something, there's just something that happens, and then by the time it's told, through a chain of like 15 people, it's completely different. By the time the 15th person retells it, it's slightly different.
I can't think of the word for it, but yeah,
it's phone, the game of phone basically, or something like that. I don't know, telephone maybe. It's like, oh, did you hear what Becky did? And I heard she did this, and then they'll go and tell somebody like, oh, well, Becky, like they'll add their agenda and like what themselves a little bit to it.
Yeah, and it's like even if it's kind of the same thing, but if you went and told 3 people the same thing, and then they went and told one person each or 3 people each, the story's going to be different between the 3 of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. That goes into perception and like how you perceive stuff and your relation to it, how close it is to you, how much it involves you and stuff like that. But
that gets me into like technology.
Yeah,
because
that can go into like censorship has a close relation to history. It's all through history. It's happening right now. Like this so it really can just get completely, like, technology is a good way to facilitate and like consolidate censorship. It's way easier to do it now. I mean, it was kind of easier back in the day too, because you didn't have the internet. You couldn't just go look all this research up yourself. You couldn't.
Right. There was one news source.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was like, it was way more, maybe not one, but a couple. Right. And that's where you got your info. Like unless it happened to you and you were close to it and you just happened to be there presently.
Right. It's one news source and then like newspapers. But all the newspapers are owned by a couple companies.
Which is just like our media now, dude. Well, we probably got how many different news stations in the U.S.? Like a couple hundred. More than that.
Yeah.
But if you really look into, like, this network owns this network, and this network owns this network, and literally all of them really come down to, like, 6 different companies. Worldwide, not just in America.
Yeah.
It might even be more consolidated than that. I wouldn't be surprised if it was. So, I don't know. Like, we're getting...
A lot of media, though, has a lot of Egyptian
symbology
in it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, see it all. I'm telling you, a lot of those early mythologies and religions and stuff still are prevalent today. It's just in a different way.
It's kind of like language.
Yeah.
You had root words, and this turned into this, and this turned into this, And it's like I wasn't around then, so like I'm just taking somebody's word for it that this root word was this word. Yeah. I mean, you can go and find examples, and you can do research, and the best thing would be to go like, if I wanted to trace where English came from, I would go to the different countries that had, there's a big thing in that one episode, like I believe we were talking about of that part, the Tinfoil Hat podcast, where that guy was talking about Norse mythology and how that guy said that there was like the Finnish, who were the Vanir, and the Swedish and Denmark were the Asir, and they had 2 different languages, and they were dead languages, and they had merged into what was like Scandinavian, like like the Swedish, or this language became what Swedish is, and this language became what Finnish was.
Yeah.
And he still knew those dead. Like imagine, like they were saying in that, like knowing a dead language that you could not speak to anybody in.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's kind of like knowing Latin.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what he compared it to is, a lot of the English language is derived from Latin, but he said, a lot of it's also
those root words. People have way more Germanic roots, or those words have way more Germanic roots and origins than people realize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like it's really like, okay, did English come from? And then like they talk about how French and English and Spanish came from Latin, and there are root words. There's a ton of them in Latin that's in those languages, but there's a lot of other ones that are Germanic, and it just doesn't really I don't know. Like when I think of, if you went to the average person and be like, where did English come from? They'd say Latin.
Yeah.
They wouldn't say a mesh of German, Latin, and all this other stuff. Or Germanic, not German, but Germanic type of stuff. But that just ties into history and like how, like I said, we've been saying, I guess that could be like, one of the main themes of this thing is history is it's super fickle, man. And maybe not fickle, but like you're taking a lot of faith and there's a lot of assumption in it. You know what I mean? You really don't know, because I wasn't alive back then, and I only know and having we've got. You were alive, there was your previous generation of your family, but they're old at that point. I would love to go back and talk to some of my ancestors or anybody back in the 1300s. I would just love to see what it was really like. I don't know as far as how accurate history is in portraying what they say it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Just do your own research, man. That's why I love that. That Tartarian stuff is really good, dude.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It really makes you think.
Yeah, he keeps talking about how all this big historical shit is fake, and
or doctored or heavily manipulated.
Basically, all the history we know almost is all smoke and mirror show.
Yeah,
and I don't mean just little bits and pieces of it. I'm talking big fucking deals throughout history that have shaped our world as we know it, are it's all fabricated, and it's just. I can't stop thinking about it, man. I can't.
It's really interesting, dude.
It's crazy. It's so crazy. And he talks about Greek and Roman and kind of how they had some influence and where their influence from Tartaria came and shit.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good too. It wasn't a real long section, but it was alright. And I'll post I'll probably take some pictures of the section and post it up for some people to read.
It's really, really, really interesting, dude. It really makes you think.
Yeah.
And, was it called Tartaria or Tartar?
Well, I think back then
because I remember the first thing I said was tartar sauce.
Tartar sauce, yeah. You talk well. That's where some root words come from, because apparently Tartaria had its own language. Yeah. And obviously now it's a dead language as well. So, but
so when did it exist? In comparison to other kingdoms. Then when did it start?
Oh, when did it say?
Was it pre-Egyptian or around the same time as Egyptian, or BC, Mesopotamian?
I think it was.
Or Greek Roman, maybe.
It might have been Greek Roman.
Yeah.
Back in
that makes sense.
Same time. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up, because I read so much.
But it was based in northern Asia, in Russia, and all throughout
Eurasia. Yeah.
Eurasia.
But it was basically, and remember, like I said, this guy's a flat earther, so
yeah.
So his
perception on it's definitely different. His take is definitely going to be different.
Some of it's hard to hang on to and grasp, but basically Tartaria was the world. It was everybody was Tartaria, and there was little outliers that wasn't really
Tartaria,
and that's where the Romanovs in Russia
came from
kind of teaming up with some other people and taking them over. And I think There was something else he mentioned, and I believe it could be like Tartaria was like from creation.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, like Big Bang Theory's fabricated type of shit.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, I mean, like that's definitely contradictory to, like, if you believe in flat Earth, like that's they don't go together. And see, that's the thing, man. And that's like this isn't related to history or mythology or anything, but like because the guy's a flat earther, me personally, I'm not convinced yet. Like I'm not. I mean, I can't.
I'm not convinced either, but
I can't say 100% that like no, that ain't it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I'm to the point to where if it came out 100,
even if I don't believe in it,
1,000%, and they was just like, yeah, the Earth is flat, and this is all the proof. This is, here it is, 100% laid out. Bam, it's flat.
Yeah,
I could accept it. I'm to that point to where I could accept it. I don't think I'd be like too blown away by it, but I'm still not there to like. I'm like, I don't know.
But you think that's the reality? Like it's just all a lie? I mean, as far as like the shape of the Earth, not history itself, but this just the shape of the Earth.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about earlier. Like, it could possibly be spherical, but at the same time, like, it's not.
It's not a perfect sphere.
It's not a fucking circle. You know what I mean? Like, there's huge mountains and different elevations all throughout the Earth that would make it a. I mean, it's just gonna look like a blob.
Maybe like a plane, not necessarily how they've portrayed it, like as like a disc.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of old religions, like like the turtles, those elephants those turtles that held up the world.
Yeah.
Like that's a big thing, like and that's just because people are like, oh well, they didn't have satellites and stuff like that. And it's my thing is like I haven't been to China, I haven't been to Antarctica, I haven't been to the North Pole, so I've never been outside the United States really for the most part, and it's like. I really don't know. I'd love to go see it, And there's the image, like people are like, yeah, I'm from China, I'm from this place, I'm from that place, and not that they don't exist. Like that place exists. It's just like I don't know. Maybe it's a plane that just goes on forever, and we're just in one spot on it, Or the planet's way bigger than what is, described. Like you have like several supercontinents or Pangeas all over the place.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I mean, me personally, like I don't trust a lot of stuff, man, but I'm still, I would say I'm more about the space. If anything, maybe it's different than, there's still planets and there's like a universe and stuff like that. Right. I'm still in that mindset, but I don't know, man. But my point is, because the guy that wrote the book was a flat earther, I'm still not going to listen to the information as it pertains to history in the world.
Right,
like I still would like to hear what he says, because I mean, like there's before, like, but aside from his, retelling or his version or perspective on it, there's other people that have talked about Tartar that aren't flat earthers and that totally provide evidence that place existed. And so it's like, or Tartaria, existing and stuff. So it's kind of like, man, it just makes you think. It really does. I hope it does. I don't know. It's super interesting.
And the Greeks and the Romans, they were super into astrology too.
Yeah. See, and that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I want to know, like, about, there's some kind of phenomenon with it. Like, it's, I don't know, there's something more to it, just to astrology. I mean, whether or not you believe in, like, that type of stuff, I just think.
The Egyptians were big into it.
Yeah, super into it. I mean, all those ancient cultures were really into it.
All of them, dude.
I mean, and this kind of gets on a different topic. This gets more into like the UFO and alien thing. But like, there's all these, like the Native Americans have all these stories about UFOs and aliens and like people from other realms and planets and just from elsewhere. Way really far away, or what were they perceived as really far away, like interdimensionally. It could be in the same space. It's just different, forms of existence and laws, like physics, like all that stuff. But and there's a lot of like African, folklore and legend and mythology around aliens and UFOs and stuff like that. That's another one that's really interesting. That makes you think about it. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's all kinds of all that stuff and like. old Christian paintings, like all these UFOs are in like these. You know, like there was one that was like the Annunciation of somebody, like it was like a saint or something like that back in the day, and there's literally like this a UFO, and it's like it's called the Ascension or like the Enlightenment or something to the effect of like I'm being like my like my perspective is widening, like I'm enlightened, I'm ascending, whatever you want to call it, like, and there's this like what appears to be a UFO, and it's like shining some kind of light into this dude's head. It's really, really crazy, and there's like a ton of stuff like that. It's really interesting, dude. You can find all kinds of examples. That'll be a whole different topic, like ancient. And when I say ancient, if we do a thing on ancient aliens, I don't mean like just like the show on History Channel called Ancient Aliens, but like aliens in ancient civilization and like depictions of it and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I would love to do something about that stuff because that's really wild too. It really makes you think. Let's see. So yeah, we talked about all the different mythologies, history. I don't know. What's your favorite mythology if you had to pick one?
Oh man,
that's hard.
I really do like Greek because it was my first, but over time and getting into more of the spiritual side of stuff, Egyptian is really just really interesting to me. I think it's probably my favorite to learn anything about or read about and try to grasp.
Yeah. I would say mine's probably, it's really hard to pick, man. Because like we said earlier, there's all these parallels and similarities between all that stuff. And it really makes you think, but it's really hard. Egyptian's super interesting. Just really old, like I would say it's all fascinating, but like the older versions of all that stuff is really what gets, like I don't know, it's way more comprehensive, and it's about like the universe and the bigger picture type stuff than it is like, I don't know, like there's all the different interpretations of the creation story of, not just life on, Earth or, wherever we are, but the universe and like just everything, existence, type stuff.
The creation of existence itself.
I'd have to say, I don't know, Egyptian. It's either Egyptian for me or Norse is really interesting because it's definitely, I don't know, it's a different interpretation. It's not the same at all.
Right, it is.
I mean, as far as like the philosophical parts of it, like the core, primal, like, very basic, all the superfluous stuff. I couldn't get the word out. Stripped away, all the base stuff is similar, but it's pretty different. It's polar in a lot of ways to Egyptian.
Yeah, it's pretty different from it.
It's just not, I don't know, it seems more relatable. Egyptian is like, it's really, it's so different.
Egyptian
really
seems
particular.
Much more benevolent to me.
Really?
As far as being like it's easier for me to imagine Egyptian gods and goddesses being like ethereal or something like that than it does for me like
interdimensional.
Like I feel like the Norse gods are more like the Greek and Roman gods as far as being like,
it's just they're like what
they're actual people that existed or
entities or
they
something.
They were just like really heroic, and like their legend left behind was made them these gods.
Got turned into over retellings and retellings into this.
Got turned into these godlike beings, and when you die, you're gonna go to Valhalla and have, supper with Odin and drink and shit.
Fight every day. You woke up and had this giant battle. Didn't matter if you got killed or whatever. You were in it for the thrill and the glory, and then you always ended back up at the hall, and you would just literally have a party that was like the end of all parties. All just the time, every night.
Just a kick-ass fucking time.
You were just, pretty much doing it over and over and over and over again. It was like great, man. and you were going to like they would fight like the frost giants and stuff like that, and go to Niflheim and Muspelheim and all that stuff. Muspelheim was like the fiery realm, I think, and Niflheim was the like frozen, like where the
that was the frost giant territory, I believe.
Yeah. It's super interesting.
It was like that guy on Tinfoil was talking about with the cosmic egg.
Yeah.
And Ymir
being set free by the sun because it was like order, but it was like it's necessary for me to have this because like we're two different ends of the same thing.
And then that's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, and we've talked about it before with yin and yang and duality and stuff. It's kind of like Tartarian, why it was overthrown like that, but he compares it to that too.
Yeah.
Like you gotta have because it was this great thing, right? It was this great empire, and so something naturally had to come up to overthrow it.
Yeah.
In order to create balance.
Yes, and it just keeps flipping over and over type thing.
And that's pretty common in a lot of mythologies and stuff too. It's like
a shift, like back and forth. Yeah.
And it's like it's just like if you watch a movie, there's this part where the hero's down and out, and you think he's gonna be done.
Yeah, it seems super dark, and it just flips.
Yeah.
It starts out good, it'll get bad. Then they're like, you know what? I think we might be able to do it. And then whatever is represented by evil or the anti role,
right.
They're like, oh no, we got it on lockdown, and everything becomes desperate. And they're like, there's no way that this heroic figure can rise up and like defeat it, but he does against all odds. And it's like everything's cool again.
Right.
Yeah. It's like
there's a part 2.
But it's like polarity. Like it's just revolving. Yeah. Constant back and forth balance, like you said.
Has to be.
Yeah. It's super interesting, man. I don't know. I love mythology, and it really, like, I myself, I guess, would identify more with, like, I really like a lot of Eastern stuff, like Taoism and Buddhism, because it's not like...
If I were going to practice any of it...
You're not taking this deity and you're not worshiping it. He's literally just telling you, like, you can be like me. And you really just have to discipline yourself and do a lot of stuff looking inward to reach this level.
Right.
And it's super basic. It's like, it's not hard, but it is. It's incredibly difficult.
It doesn't sound
It requires
hard,
focus, like constant attention to that.
But if you try to get into that mindset and live like giving up things in general is a difficult thing for people to do.
Yeah, like I used to smoke forever, man. And now I'm to the point where I'm just like, I don't know. I don't need it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really don't.
I mean, I got the little e-cig thing, but I'm going to give it up soon, too.
Yeah.
Smoking was tough, but it wasn't as tough as I thought it was. Once you get in that mindset, I was like, boom, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. I think back at it now, and it's just like, I never want to... Like, when I smoked cigarettes, I was like, man, I can't, like... It would be terrible to not do this. It's almost to that level, and then you're like, now I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, it's so fucking gross. And I think about my lungs and like everything that I was doing, and probably how I smell. I probably smelled like a fucking ashtray, all that. Dude. It's just like, I don't know, man. I can't. It just seems so disgusting to me now, like just repulsive, the idea, and I'm just like, I can't, not anymore.
I've been trying to.
I have triggers every now and then.
Trying to get in that mindset about other stuff too.
Yeah. I don't know. I love gaming, but I'm getting to that point too where I'm just like, I can't do it like I used to. I'm just,
it doesn't.
It's focus and attention on stuff that's not really getting you. I mean, if it's therapeutic for you and you unwind, cool, but like moderation.
Yeah,
for
right.
Sure.
Like I might get on for like an hour and then I'm good.
Yeah.
But like I'd rather I'm trying to really get focused on reading and having this different material to pull from and just really just getting more knowledge.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to do, and we were originally going to do one on spirituality and like philosophy like that today. But I just thought it was really, because you were talking about that book and like I was reading little bits and pieces of it, and it really makes you think about history and just like what a paradigm is, and like understanding that structure and how easy like it's
a hard thing to accept.
But at the same time, it's like it's really like the more I think about it and the more I look into stuff like that, and that's with anything, dude. Just like that we're going to talk about on this podcast and this channel in general, is it's like you really start looking into it, and it's like you get in this mindset. You can really see what I'm getting at is how it's easier to become indoctrinated to a false paradigm like that than you would think.
No, yeah.
It really is. Like, you really don't, I don't know, like there's a lot of assumptions to how we see history and how we view history and perceive it as how it, how it actually happened. There's so many assumptions that are made about it.
And you got to think about this too. It's like the people that are teaching you history were taught history by people who learned it from.
Yeah, it's literally that game of telephone again, where stuff just gets changed. It really comes back to that same theme a lot.
The belief through the generations, like we were talking about earlier, how if you make this generation believe this thing is true, then the next one will assume it, and so on and so forth, and then it gets so far to where it's just like
it becomes foundational more and more.
This extremely hard, just compact truth that cannot be undone.
Yeah,
and they've done that, I believe, with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, oh for sure.
With a whole
I don't care if you think
stuff.
I'm crazy or not. There's so much stuff that it really could not be quite what you think it is, at the very least.
Yeah, and that's why I liked talking about mythology.
That's why I like talking about those secret societies and like stuff like that. Like all those people have so much power and influence. It's literally like
a lot of secret societies. I feel like too have ties to old mythological like practices and beliefs, and that gets into like bloodlines from all the way back into those Egyptian days and the Greeks and the Romans, and and
the knowledge that those people had.
Yeah.
And if you keep knowledge away from people, that's power. It really is. So I don't know, man. Like I wouldn't put it past people to really put a ton of effort into rewriting, like, what you think is what happened. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. If anything, like I said, that's what this one's about, definitely. Because I don't know, it really made me think. But I mean, mythology ties into that too. So it's just much about just the fantastical, and like you don't have to believe us. Trust me. Like you can believe whatever you want. Just look into it yourself. Honestly, become your own opinion. But don't let people, I guess, tell you how to think and what to think. For sure.
Don't be so easily influenced.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't. Can you think of? It's been like an hour and 20.
Yeah, we've been going for a bit. I guess we can start to wrap it up now. And start editing and stuff.
Yeah.
So, if you've made it this far into the video, if you've got any input for us, I know we started to ramble a lot, but that's
what the podcast is for.
That's kind of what we're doing. It's just hanging out, talking, just discussing different things that we find interesting and strange.
The podcast is not, a good way to put it is not like, here are all these truths and you need to believe them because we said they're true and we think that they're true. It's just, it's like us. I like to use my imagination and just go all out with it, and
yeah,
that's really what it is. It's just bouncing both, different versions of that back at each other. It's really thinking about stuff.
Yeah, so leave us a like, drop comments, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends.
We got a UFO top 5 short that we got. It's shorter content, like lengthwise, time-wise.
Yeah, it's hopefully going to end up being like 25 minutes or so.
Yeah, just gotta edit. It's a lot more editing though.
Yeah,
this is just us, sitting down talking. That's what I mean. That's what it's for.
No, yeah, right. Just sitting down, kind of.
We got that coming.
Conversating.
We're looking into actually went to a thing and started looking at different There was hats. There was like hoodies and shirts. It's gonna be super basic at first. You know, just different things like that. Coffee mugs, all that stuff. I can't think of anything else.
I'm still trying to look into
our website. That's going to come too.
Yeah, I'm going to start looking on Fiverr at people and seeing if I can find someone that I.
Because that's really where, like, I mean, this YouTube stuff is a way to get to information out to people and, you know, just filter people to the website. But like I said, the website's where we're really going to get into. It's going to be no holds barred.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all kinds of shit. Oh, you fucking child trafficking, all that stuff.
Yeah, I really like to go into that. I don't like going into it because it's dark.
I don't want to talk about it, especially as a father, but man, people got to know about that shit.
Yeah, just be more aware, dude.
People have to stand up to that, man. That's just... all that. And then there's, I mean, just more than that too, with all of
current events, man.
Current events, yeah. That's what we'll just call it, the whole current event.
Yeah, because I don't know. There's a lot of trigger words on just YouTube in general that'll get you.
There's a lot of bullshit going around and everywhere, just everywhere. Social media, mainstream, you know, TV media.
It relates to what we're talking about today, man. Just censorship and rewriting of history and just retelling and altering people's perceptions.
Yeah, man. I mean, they'll twist a story around in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and it's so fast. Like we were talking about with technology, it's so fast now you don't even realize it happened.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy.
But anyway, website's coming. We need it. Rockfin, I guess that's not really censored as much either. We really need to get on there.
No, and he was talking about a couple more too that I want to look into.
BitChute.
Some other stuff like that.
BitChute's one.
There's some other like platforms.
I'd like to get on Apple.
Apple
Podcasts.
Yeah, well, I got an iPhone now, so maybe we can
get into that
or something.
But yeah, if you made it this far, like you were saying, thank you so much.
Appreciate you listening to us ramble and rave about nonsense.
Yeah. Hopefully we haven't freaked you out, or I don't know. I really don't care at this point. People think I'm crazy, man. I want the information, whether it's true or not. I'm going to talk about it. After I research and look into it. So, like and subscribe. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you on the next one, man. Yeah. Peace.
You guys take it easy.